My name is Bowen. If you don't know me, I'm a psychologist and a yoga teacher. Currently work at the Marion Centre, and you may have probably done yoga with me there. So I'm going to share with you a simple yoga practice today. I always like to start by saying if there's something that I am sharing or suggesting or inviting and you don't feel like doing it, please do something else or don't do it. You might want to wait or do something that you prefer to do, something we've done before or something that comes to your mind. Feel free to do any variation or alternate thing that you think might be better off for you. To start with, normally I like to start on my back, and if that's comfortable for you, it could be nice to lay on your back, perhaps maybe with your knees bent a comfortable distance apart. You might want to have your arms off your mat slightly, or have your hands palms face up or down, whatever you prefer. Can be nice to have some conscious breaths, or maybe a longer inhalation or exhalation can be nice. You might also notice the movements of your body with your breath, or if you don't like to have your attention on your breath, that's okay. I might make references throughout the practice, but you can choose to have your attention elsewhere if you prefer. You might notice the contact with your ground and your mat. You might notice the air on your skin on the exposed parts of your body. There might be some sounds that you can hear, the sounds of my voice, or some music if you're playing some music. And from where you are, you might like to let your knees go to the left towards the floor. Maybe you want to pause for a moment. You might feel that as a bit of a twist into your torso, your lower back and hips. And in your own time, you might want to come up and over to the other side. Again, you might want to pause for a moment, but feel free to move at your own pace. Another variation you could try is where you cross one leg over the other and roll to the side that you've crossed, working your foot and knee down. You might feel that as a bit of a deeper stretch into your hip or lower back. And again, you might want to do both sides if you are doing that, or you might prefer to stay with your knees apart. You can experiment how far apart. When you're even and you've done both sides the same, you could, with your knees in an upright position, perhaps take up your right foot and take it towards the ceiling, and then bring your right foot up onto your left knee or thigh. If you wanted to, you could slide your foot down a little further towards the top of your thigh. And then maybe with your right hand, you could press on your right knee and take your right knee away from you. You might want to find a spot to stay and hold in a bit of a stretch point. That can be nice. Feel free, if you prefer, to take your knee forward and back, or have some movement with your leg. It's your choice. You might feel it if you're holding it into a stretch into your hip and thigh. You might feel the movement if you're moving as you feel the tension build and release. When you're ready to, you might want to let go. Perhaps straighten up your leg and place it back down beside your other foot, and then take up your left foot towards the ceiling and then up onto your right knee or thigh. Again, you might want to slide your foot down, maybe not. It's your choice how little or far you go with that. You might want to press onto your left knee, this time with your left hand, working your left knee away from you. Again, you might want to stay and hold in a stretch point. You might prefer to have some movement with your knee towards you and away. Again, you might feel that this time into your left hip, your left thigh, lower back. There might be a difference from one side to the other, might not. Sometimes we notice that, sometimes we don't. When you're ready and even, you could let that leg go, straightening it back up again. This time perhaps keeping that left leg straight, you could lower it all the way back to your mat. And then from there you could lift up your right knee and foot off the ground if you wanted, and then perhaps bringing your hand to the top of your knee or into the inside of your thigh if you prefer that. You might want to start with some movements, taking your knee from side to side, perhaps feeling into your thigh and hip. From there you might want to take your knee in some circles or semicircles, going in one direction and around into the other direction. And then if you wanted to, you could have a bit of a stretch with the knee and thigh by pulling your knee towards you. You might want to stay and hold in a bit of a stretch point. You might feel into your lower back and hip. Feel free if you prefer to go back to movement, side to side or circles, or away from you and back towards you. From there, if you wanted to, you could let go of your left hand and straighten it out to the side, perhaps with your palms face down or up. And then from there, you could take your right hand to take your knee and thigh out to the right towards your mat. You can go as little or as far as you want. Again, you might want to stay and hold in a bit of a stretch point. Feel free if you want to bring your knee back up and down with some movement. And another variation you could from here go into if you wanted was to straighten your right leg, perhaps bringing your hand under your knee a little bit or thigh, and work to straighten your leg out and down. Again, you can go as little or as far as you want. You can stay and hold with a stretch point. You can move up and down if you prefer. And from there, with your leg, you could bring it back to a more upright position, maybe straight, slightly bent. You could, from there, bring your hands around behind the back of your leg or knee or thigh or foot. And if you wanted to have a stretch in this, you could work your leg back towards you. You might feel that in your hamstrings, in your lower back. From here, if you wanted to, you could experiment taking your toes away from you and towards you. You might feel that into your hamstrings. You might feel it in your shin and calf. You might prefer to have your foot still with your toes back towards you or away from you, or have movement. Again, it's your choice. And when you're ready to finish with that leg, if you haven't already, you could let go of your leg, let it float back towards your mat beside your other leg. Maybe you want to have a little rest in between movements by turning your palms up, letting your feet fall apart. That can be nice. Maybe having a conscious breath or a deeper inhalation and exhalation. And then when you're ready to, you might want to bend and bring up your left knee and grab around below the top of your left knee, or on the inside of your thigh if you prefer. You might want to take your knee again from side to side, moving your thigh, perhaps feeling that again into your hip and thigh, lower back. You could from there move into taking your knee in some circles or semicircles in each direction if you prefer. And again, if you wanted to, you could have a bit of a stretch, pulling on your knee towards you. Maybe you want to stay and hold with that in a stretch point, perhaps feeling that into your lower back, hip. But feel free if you want to move forward and back with your knee, or go back to circles if you prefer. From there, if you wanted to even it up, if you did it before, you might want to release your right hand and take it out to the right, and take your left knee this time away from you and towards the side, towards your mat floor. You might want to stay and hold in a stretch point. Feel free to move up and down. And again, you might want to have a go straightening your leg out, maybe working your legs to straighten. You might not straighten it all the way, you might not lower it all the way to your mat. You can choose how little or as far as you want. You might want to stay and hold with it. You might want to move it up or bend and straighten your leg. It's your choice. When you're ready, you can bring your leg back to centre, maybe straight, maybe slightly bent. You could work your leg back towards you in a bit of a stretch with your hands behind your leg or knee or calf, foot, ankle. Maybe you want to stay and hold with it. Maybe you want to move your toes towards you and away. You might prefer to have some stillness. Feel free to have movement if you prefer, or stillness if you prefer, or combinations of the two. When you feel that's about even that you did on the other side, you might want to let go of your leg, let it go back beside your other. Again, you might want to have a little rest. You might feel that as a bit of a release, perhaps letting your feet fall apart and turning your hands up. Maybe having a deeper breath, inhale or exhale, or a conscious breath, maybe not. From here, if you wanted to, again, you could bend your knees and bring your heels up towards your butt. You could have your hands, palms face down, perhaps in line with your shoulders. From there, if you wanted to, you could press with your feet, lift with your thighs to raise your hips up into what they call a bridge pose. You might want to stay and hold in a bit of a static bridge, maybe with some little movements, maybe not. Feel free if you want to lower down and raise back up in what I call draw bridging. You might feel that into your spine, into your legs and thighs, whatever you prefer. If you want to stay and hold, if you want to lower down and come back up, it's your choice. Can be nice to have some conscious breaths or notice your breathing. Sometimes people synchronize with movements and breath, or they notice that happens naturally. When you're ready to finish with your bridging, you could lower down if you're not already. You might want to bring your feet together, your heels together and your toes together, and let your knees fall apart into what first half of what they call a butterfly pose. You could, from there, go into the full butterfly by stacking your hands, the back of your hand into your palm, and then bringing the backs of your hands above the top of your head on your mat, and let your elbows fall apart. Feel free to move or adjust in any way with your knees or elbows, arms, legs, feet, hands. Again, it can be nice to have some conscious breaths and notice your breathing. I like to remind myself of the metaphor of the butterfly as the symbol of the transformation. And the butterfly goes on a journey from the caterpillar to the cocoon in a period of being stuck and trapped as part of the transformation. And if you cut a butterfly out of the cocoon too soon, it will fall to the floor and never fly. It needs that period of being in the cocoon, perhaps being stuck and trapped. Perhaps it's a struggle to emerge from the cocoon, but it's part of the journey, part of the transformation. And maybe our mental health journey can be a bit like that. Sometimes it could be periods of being stuck and trapped, feel like we're going backwards or nowhere. Maybe that's part of our learning, part of our growth, part of our transformation, part of the journey. When you're ready to finish with the butterfly, if you haven't already, you could straighten your legs. Maybe point your toes away. You could straighten your arms above you and lengthen your fingers away from you. You might feel that as a bit of a stretch into your torso, legs and arms. You feel a bit of an arch in your back. From there, you could bring your hands up towards the ceiling and continue over so that your hands are palms face down again. You could bring your toes back towards you and perhaps push your heels away, and then perhaps you could press down into your mat, into the floor with the backs of your heels, your legs, your hands, your arms, your butt, your torso, even the back of the head. You might feel the tension build into your body. It can be again a nice metaphor with the tension that comes when we try and move things that won't be moved or change things that won't be changed. The floor doesn't want to move, builds tension. Can be like when we try and change the past or change things that can't be changed. It can build tension. And maybe you're ready, if you haven't already, turning your palms up and letting your feet fall apart. You might let that release. You might feel a bit of the release that comes from letting that go. It can be a nice reminder of the release that can come from acceptance, letting things go. You might still feel the weight of gravity and the air on your skin, and might be some things that don't change, but there can be a release that can come through accepting the things that we can't change. From here, if you like, you could spin around and onto your stomach and maybe onto your forearms. It can be nice perhaps to lift a little away from your hands and your mat into what they call a sphinx pose. Comfortable distance, you can go as little or as far back as you want. You can, if you like, it can be nice. I like to feel into my neck. Perhaps you could drop your chin and maybe take your chin a little from side to side and feel into your neck, perhaps with those little semicircle movements that you could do. And if you wanted to, you could get into larger circles, and you might take your chin around in some larger circles going in each direction. You might feel that into your shoulders, into your neck. From here, if you wanted to, you could take your chin over to your left shoulder, and you might feel a bit of a stretch on your right side as your left side contracts. You can stay for a bit, keep moving, and then if you wanted to, you could do both sides. Maybe going over to your other shoulder. And you could try your chin to your chest. You might feel the back of your neck expand. And if you wanted to, you could try your chin to the ceiling. You might even want to press a little with your elbows or forearms and feel a lift perhaps from your belly button all the way to your chin. From here, if you wanted to, you could come out of this by lowering down and perhaps stacking your hands so that you can make a pillow for your forehead and lowering your forehead to the back of your hands. And giving yourself permission to have a little bit of a rest. You might feel that as a release into your torso, into your back, shoulders. From here, if you wanted to, you could bend your knees and bring your heels towards your butt. You might want to stay there. You might want to raise and lower your feet if you want. If you wanted to get into a bit of a stretch with your legs, thighs, you could reach back for your foot, ankles, and work your heels towards your butt. Feel free to stay and hold and stretch, or if you want to have movement, to raise and lower your feet towards the floor and back. You might want to stay with that or where you are with the movement. Another variation you could try is what they call a bow, where you work your shoulders back. You might even lift your knees or thighs. You might want to stay and hold with that. You might want to release. Stay with movement. Another variation you could try is where you release your feet, keeping your hands back, and then with your legs straight, lifting up your feet or your knees, your thighs, your hands, your chin, what they call a locust. And then from there, when you're ready, you might want to lower down if you're not already, perhaps stacking your hands again, lowering your forehead. You might feel that as a release from your torso, the tension that you felt from holding. You might notice the weight of gravity. Can be nice to have a conscious breath or a deeper inhalation or exhalation. From here, you could straighten your arms away from you, palms face down from the top of your mat. And then from there, you could have a go if you wanted by lifting your right foot and leg and your left hand and arm and holding it for a few moments. You might feel that, again, there's a bit of tension in your core and your back, upper back, into your arm and leg. And then when you're ready, you might want to swap over. Do your left leg, your right arm. Maybe staying and holding for a few moments again. And then when you're ready, you could lower down. Now you could repeat that, or if you wanted to get into a little bit deeper, you could have a go doing both feet, both hands and arms, staying and holding for a few moments. In your own time, you might want to lower that down, and perhaps again you could stack your hands, lower your forehead, maybe have a moment of rest again. You might feel that as a bit of a release into your torso. And then when you're ready, from here you could bring your hands perhaps under your shoulders, palms face down, and then from there you could lift up with your torso, pressing with your hands, raising your chin into what they call a cobra. You can stay and hold in a static cobra. Traditionally in yoga they would roll their eyes back, stick their tongue out and go ah. Don't seem to do that much in yoga these days. And feel free if you want to lower down and come back up with a moving cobra. And then when you're ready to finish with your expression of your cobra, you could perhaps come out of it by pushing up onto your hands and knees. Maybe you could move into an angel pose by taking your knees wide towards the edge of your mat, having your feet together, and then pushing back to sit back towards your heels. You might not get all the way to your heels. You may. You could lower your forehead towards your mat, maybe straightening your arms or lowering your elbows down towards your mat. It can be a nice position in if you want to have some gratitude thoughts. If you like doing gratitude thoughts, it can be nice maybe to ask yourself, what am I grateful for at the moment? What am I appreciative of at the moment? See if your mind wants to bring forth some gratitude thoughts. Maybe people or things that you're grateful for. Some good evidence that having gratitude thoughts is good for our mental health. It can be a nice thing to do, and this can be a nice one to include in your yoga practice if you're into that. From here, you could push back up onto your hands and knees, and you could have a go at what they call the frog pose. The frog is where you keep your knees wide towards the edge of your mat. You might want to take them even wider if that's available. And then perhaps having your ankles in line with your knees and your feet at a 90 degree. Now you can stay up on your hands, or you can walk forward with your hands a little, working your hips further forward, lowering them towards your mat. If it's comfortable, you might be able to come down onto your forearms. You might want to make a pillow for your forehead with your wrists or your hands. You might want to keep extending and lowering your groin hips towards your mat, maybe staying and sort of holding in a bit of a releasing static stretch. Feel free if you want to push forward and back and have a little bit of movement or adjustments in any way. Can be nice. It can be nice to have some conscious breaths or a deeper inhalation and exhalation if that feels nice. Feel free. From here, if you wanted to, you could have a go where you bring your feet up to join your heels again, maybe bringing your heels in towards your butt. You could go back into more of a sphinx pose, raising your chin if you wanted. Or you might want to lower a little bit further forward, it's your choice. Might enable you to lower a little bit further down. Feel free to move or adjust with your feet or legs, thighs, hands, arms, forearms. And when you're ready to release from here, you could straighten your legs out and perhaps stack your hands again and lower your forehead to the back of your hands. Perhaps having a little bit of a release again, a couple of conscious breaths or a deeper inhalation and exhalation. You might feel that release into your hips and lower back. And then from here again, you could bring your hands perhaps under your shoulders again and push back up onto your hands and knees. You could go into an all fours position with your hands under your shoulders, your knees under your hips, what they call a tabletop. And then from the tabletop you could move into the cat and cow. The cow is where you arch your back, raise your chin, have your shoulders go back, And then the cat is where you arch or round your spine up to the ceiling, bringing your shoulders forward, your chin to your chest. And you can move from one to the other. Or should I say move from one to the other? Meowing being optional. You can get playful with your cat and cow, perhaps taking your hips side to side or in circles, or your shoulders forward and back, or moving your chin around, or elbow down and back up if you wanted. You can feel into your spine and neck and shoulders and move in any way that feels nice for you with some variation. It can be nice. And from here, if you wanted to, coming back to a more neutral position, you could walk your hands to the right and perhaps looking towards your right shoulder with your knees staying forward. You might feel this is a bit of a stretch and expanding on one side of your body and torso as the other contracts. And then in your own time you might want to even that up, going from one side to the other. And then when you're even, you could come back to an all fours position again. And from here, if you wanted to, you can have a go straightening your right leg and keeping it in line with your torso, and maybe lifting your left arm and holding that in line with your torso. Now you might want to stay and hold that in a bit of a core balancing exercise. You might want to raise and lower. You might need to raise and lower your hand and leg a few times in your own time. Whatever you need is what you need. And then when you're ready to swap over, you could lower down and perhaps have your left leg straightened and raised and your right arm holding, balancing again for a few moments, or raising and lowering in your own time, in your own way. And then when you're about even, you might want to lower back down. And then from here, you could push back onto your heels, coming up off your hands. If you want to come off your heels and use your hands to lift off your thighs a little, feel free. That's something I needed to do for a while, a bit more comfortable. If it is comfortable to sit on your heels, maybe you want to bring the backs of your hands to your thighs. You might want to soften your gaze or close your eyes for a few moments, maybe having some conscious breaths, or notice your breathing. And then from here, when you're ready, you could come up off your heels a little to bring your feet out to the left side of your mat, so that you can sit to the right side of your feet, and then perhaps taking your right hand behind you and have your left hand to your right knee and thigh, having a twist looking to your right shoulder or towards your right shoulder. You might feel that in your torso, hip as a twist. And then from there you could come up and over to the other side, bringing your feet out to the right side of your mat, sitting to the left side of your feet, having your left hand behind and your right hand to the outside of your left knee. This time looking to your left shoulder, twisting in the opposite direction. From there you could release and maybe come to face the front of your mat. Maybe from there you want to go into a wide-legged seated position. You could take your legs as little or as far apart as is available and comfortable to you. You might want to have your legs straight or slightly bent. You could experiment with the position of your feet and toes. And then from here, you could, in a wide-legged position, have a wide-legged forward bend. Maybe with your hands down your legs or out in front of you and extending forward. You can go as little or as far as is available to you. I can't go very far. And maybe you want to stay and hold in a bit of a static stretch. Feel free to bring your hands behind and lean forward and back if you prefer, or move and adjust in any way that feels right for you. It's your choice. Sometimes it can be nice to stay and hold, a bit of a slow stretch. And sometimes it's preferable to move. Everybody's different, and you can be different on different days. Can be nice to have some conscious breaths or some deeper breaths, or maybe you don't want to observe your breathing. It's your choice again. And from here, when you're ready to come out, if you're not already, from your wide-legged position, you could slowly bring your feet together. Maybe you want to give your legs a little bit of a shake, or your hands and shoulders, and then in your own time you could come into what they call a seated butterfly, perhaps bringing your heels in towards your groin, your feet together, working your knees out to the side. You can grab your feet if you like, or work your feet open a little. And if you wanted to, you could have a forward bend, either grabbing your feet or sliding your hands forward if you prefer, working your torso to your feet, towards your feet. You can go as little or as far as you want, perhaps as available to you. Maybe you want to stay and hold in a bit of a stretch point that's a nice stretch point position for you. Feel free if you want to have movement again, leaning forward and back, or moving or adjusting. You can experiment with the positioning of your knees or feet, torso. You might feel it into your hips and lower back, groin. Again, you might want to have some conscious breaths, or notice your breathing. Maybe having a slightly deeper inhalation or exhalation. And then from there, when you're ready, in your own time, you might want to come more upright if you're not already. You could straighten out your legs again. Maybe you want to give them a bit of a shake, or move your toes around, or move your shoulders or hands in a releasing way can be nice. And then from a straight-legged position, you could have a forward bend in with the straight legs, or maybe slightly bent if you prefer. It can be nice sometimes to have your legs slightly bent. It's your choice. And then you could slowly work your hands down your legs, stopping at a stretch point if you want, working your torso forward. Maybe you want to stay and hold in a static stretch point for a few breaths or a few moments. Maybe you prefer to have some movement coming forward and back, or moving or adjusting in any way that feels right for you. Maybe you want to have some conscious breaths again, or notice your breathing. You might feel it into your hamstrings, behind the backs of your legs, into your lower back. You might feel it into your torso, you might feel it into your shoulders or neck. Sometimes on the exhalation, or you can bring attention to other parts of your body. Perhaps maybe you can release some tension in your shoulders or hands or face. Maybe not. And then when you're ready to finish with your forward bend, however you are, you might want to come more into an upright position if you're not already. Perhaps from here it could be nice to extend your hands up and arms up towards the ceiling. Maybe lengthen your torso for a few moments. And then when you're ready, you might want to release that, maybe shaking your hands or shoulders or feet or legs, having a bit of a release. And then from here, you could go lean back into, with your hands behind, fingers pointing away, maybe leaning back and looking up towards the ceiling. It can be nice to have a bit of a counter stretch. You might feel that into your lower back and hamstrings. You can stay there for a few moments if you wanted, or if you wanted to get into a reverse plank, you could lift your hips up, point your toes away, maybe look towards the ceiling as you're doing it, as you were. From there, if you are up, you might want to come down. If you are down, you might want to have a go where you bend your knees and have your knees like a triangle, or your legs like a triangle with the feet comfortable distance apart. Again, maybe you want to lean back and look up. You could stay there, or you could lift up into what they call a reverse tabletop, lifting your hips and groin towards the ceiling. Maybe staying and holding for a few moments. And then when you're ready, you might want to lower down. If you're not already, perhaps coming into a seated position of your choosing, maybe cross-legged or one leg in front of the other. From there you could have another forward bend if you wanted, walking your hands away, walking your forehead forward, maybe lowering your torso down towards your mat. You might want to stay and hold again in a bit of a stretch point. Feel free to move or adjust, raising or lowering if you prefer to have movement. From there, if you wanted to, you could have a go where you take your hands and torso out over your left knee and thigh, and perhaps lower down your left side. You might feel this in your right hip, the right side of your body. And then if you are doing that, you might want to go even it up by going out to the other side, to your right side, and lowering down. You might feel that tension and stretch swap over from one side of your torso to the other. If you are doing that, it could be nice and even to come back to the centre again and lower down one last time. Sometimes you can feel a bit of a change if you've gone from side to side, maybe not. And when you're ready, you can slowly come back up, if you're not already, into a more upright seated position, maybe cross-legged or one leg in front of the other. It could be nice from here to have another twist by bringing your right hand behind and perhaps your left hand to your right knee and twisting, looking towards your right shoulder. And then you could go around to the other side. Or even you could come back to a centre position. Perhaps from here you could have a go turning your palms up and bringing the backs of your hands or wrists to your knees or thighs. If it's comfortable, you might want to close your eyes or soften your gaze. You could find a nice position for your chin. And in this position, it can be nice to invite in an attitude of acceptance. I like to say to myself, I accept myself just as I am. You could say that to yourself in your mind's eye. I accept myself just as I am. It doesn't mean that you don't want to improve, you don't want to do better. We all want to improve, generally. It's part of who we are. Accept myself as I am. That I want to improve, learn and grow as I am. We're all on a journey of learning, all on a journey of growth. And even if we have resisting thoughts, should be here, should be there, could have, should have, if only this, that or the other. So we can accept ourselves, even if we have resisting thoughts, whatever I'm thinking, however I'm feeling, I can accept myself just as I am. From here, if you like, it could be nice to bring your palms together and maybe rub your palms, feeling a little bit of skin-to-skin contact. And then if you like, you could bring your thumbs to your chest and your hands into a prayer position. In this position, it can be nice to say a prayer for ourselves. I always like to say the prayer of loving kindness for myself. Perhaps you could join in and say to yourself, may I be well. May I be happy. May I be loved. And may I have peace. May I have peace in my mind, in my heart, my emotions, and in my body. And it can be nice to send that prayer of love and kindness to a loved one or someone that you feel like to send that to some thoughts of love and kindness, acceptance. Maybe you could say, bring them to mind and say in your mind's eye, may you be well. May you be happy. May you be loved. And may you have peace. peace in your mind, in your heart, and in your body. From here it can be nice to interlace your fingers, perhaps pushing your hands away and rounding your shoulders forward. And then from there you could take your hands up towards the ceiling and back towards the back of your head. You can go as little or as far as you want with it. You might want to stay and hold in a stretch point. Feel free to raise and lower with movement if you prefer. And then when you're ready to, from here, or wherever you are, you could take your hands out wide, palms face forward, perhaps stopping in line with your shoulders. And then from there, you might feel this into your shoulders and upper back, and then you could take your hands back behind you. You might feel that as a bit of a stretch into your upper back, into your shoulders, into your chest. And then from there, you could fold your arms forward, perhaps rounding your shoulders forward, giving yourself a bit of a hug and a squeeze. Perhaps you have your right arm on top of your left, or the other way. Just make a note of which arm's on top, because we'll even it up. In this one, I like to say to myself, I love you just the way you are. We all deserve love and kindness, acceptance on our journey of learning. From here you could release and perhaps shake that off, or move your shoulders around. And then maybe you want to swap your legs over, maybe not, and cross your legs in the other way. You might feel that shift a little slightly in your legs and hips. And then you could repeat that again if you wanted, bringing your hands together and interlacing your fingers and pushing your hands away. And then rounding your shoulders up towards the ceiling, or hands and arms back towards the ceiling in your back of your head. And then from there again, you could release your hands and take them out wide, perhaps stopping in line with your shoulders. And then maybe taking your hands back behind you. Again, you might feel that into your chest and shoulders. And then this time you could cross your arm over the other way. I'm doing my left on top of my right. Giving myself a hug and a squeeze again, rounding my shoulders forward. Again, it can be nice to say to yourself, I love you just the way you are. We all deserve love on our journey of learning. Now from here, you could release again, maybe you want to shake it off. And from here you could come back over into an all fours position, perhaps with your feet towards the back of your mat. And then from the all fours, you could come up off your hands and perhaps into a kneeling position. It can be nice from here to turn your palms face forward and opening your shoulders again into a bit of a acceptance position. It can be nice again to say, I accept myself just as I am on my journey of learning. We're all learning one step at a time. And from here, it can be nice to take a step, maybe sliding or stepping your right foot forward into what they call a low lunge position. You can experiment how you have your foot, in or out, forward or back. Can be nice if you wanted to have a bit of a stretch in this one, working your knee forward towards your toes, maybe with your hands on your knee or thigh, maybe on the ground if you prefer. Another variation you could try is where you bring your hands up and arms up towards the ceiling as you work the knee forward in a bit of a stretch. That can be nice sometimes. And then from here you could bring your hands forward, folding forward with your torso, perhaps keeping your hands beside your feet, and then maybe having your left hand on your mat and following your right arm up, twisting a little with your chin and torso as you raise it towards the ceiling. Maybe holding for a moment, and then when you're ready you can bring your hand down into the inside of your foot, maybe your other hand and arm under your other shoulder, and then from there, they call this the lizard pose. You could stay there or lower down, bending your elbows and lowering down into your expression of a lizard if you want to get into a bit of a stretch. Some people get down onto their forearms, or they might make a pillow with their hands or arms or wrists. You might want to raise and lower. You might want to be with your arms straight if you prefer. Whatever your lizard is your lizard. There's no one true lizard pose. When you're ready to come out of your lizard, you could bring your right arm back and hand back to the outside of your right foot, or where it's comfortable for you, and then from there you could follow your left hand and arm up towards the ceiling, twisting a little with your gaze and torso. Maybe you want to stay and hold for a moment, and then when you're ready you could lower it down, perhaps bringing your hand back down, and then from this position you could perhaps move into what they call a pigeon. A pigeon, or a reclining pigeon, or forward reclining pigeon, is where you work your foot across and back as much as you need to get your right knee down. Now you might want to bring it back towards your knee or thigh. Maybe you slide that left knee further back, maybe that's helpful. Whatever is your comfortable position for your foot, your knee, your thigh, your left leg and knee. And then you might want to stay on your hands. If it's comfortable, you might want to come down onto your forearms, or maybe make a pillow for your forehead with your wrists or your hands, or you might want to take your forehead all the way to your mat, extending your arms forward. It's your choice. Feel free to move or adjust in any way that feels right for you. Maybe you want to have some conscious breaths, or notice your breathing. You might feel this into your right thigh, into your lower back, into your groin or your hip. Typically you can get into your psoas muscle. It can be nice to stay and hold in a bit of a stretch. Feel free to come out of it any time you want, or move or adjust. I used to find this one quite difficult when I started yoga. I found it really uncomfortable. But I found that it was worthwhile to sort of stay with it, with that uncomfortableness, and because the release, I always felt like there was a release, connection between the stretch, the hold and the release. This one could be a nice reminder of the serenity prayer too, the parts that you have to accept, the tension maybe in your hip, thigh, lower back. And maybe you can release tension, maybe in your fingers or toes or shoulders, face, maybe in your breathing. And then when you are ready to come out of your lizard, it can be nice, your pigeon, it can be nice to roll to your side into the fetal position, sliding your foot back and coming over into the fetal position for a few moments. You might feel that as a bit of a release, and see the connection between the tension and the release. We're not always in control of the times of tension or the release, but we can remind ourselves that they do go together, they do come in their own time, the release after the tension. Sometimes in our minds we can cling on, want to hold on to the release or let go of the tension when we're not in control. We can add to it. Sometimes people say this too shall pass, to remind ourselves of the change that is inevitable, that we're not always in control of. And perhaps from here we could change now to come back up onto your all fours position and back up onto your knees. Again, you could turn your palms up, face forward, maybe have a moment again of acceptance. Accepting yourself as you are, accepting your body as it is, not as it was or as you would like it to be, but I want to try and practice accepting ourselves as we are. Maybe you notice a difference between your left and right side, and maybe from here we could get into our left side this time by sliding or stepping your left foot forward. Again, you find your spot for your foot that feels right for you. Maybe you want to have your hands on your knee or thigh. Maybe you want to have a stretch forward again, working your knee forward. Maybe you prefer your hands on the floor, or you might want to bring your hands up to the ceiling altogether if you prefer. It's your choice. When you feel that's about even from before, you could bring your hands down, stopping perhaps with your torso and your hands beside your feet. And then maybe keeping your right hand on your mat, this time following your left hand and arm up towards the ceiling, maybe holding for a few moments. And then when you're ready, you could bring your hand down back to the inside of your foot. Maybe have your right hand under your right shoulder. And again, you can go into your expression of a lizard. Maybe you lower down, maybe not. Maybe you raise and lower. Maybe there's a difference between one side and the other, maybe not. Maybe you want to have some conscious breaths or a deeper inhalation or exhalation. Maybe you want to notice the tension that you feel it in your hip and thigh, groin. And then when you're ready to finish with your expression of a lizard, you could bring your hand back to the outside of your left foot and this time follow your right hand up, twisting with your torso and your gaze towards the ceiling. And then from there you could bring your hand back down and then perhaps get into the pigeon, forward reclining pigeon on your left side, bringing your foot back as much as you need to get your right knee down. Perhaps towards your left knee down towards your left wrist. Maybe you take your right knee further back. Maybe you come down onto your forearms, maybe not. Maybe you want to make a pillow again. Maybe you want to take your forehead all the way to your mat. It's your choice. Again, feel free to move or adjust. Maybe you want to have some conscious breaths again. Notice your breathing or increase your inhalation and exhalation. You might notice the tension into your psoas muscle again, into your thigh, hip, lower back, into your butt, maybe. You might notice that tension. You might also be able to release tension in other parts, perhaps in your fingers or toes or shoulders or face, maybe in your breathing. Maybe not. Again, it can be good to remind ourselves sometimes of that connection between tension and release. Yoga means union, and it's nice to try and practice where we stay connected and in union with all things, the tension and release. And then when you feel that's about even, you might want to come out of it if you haven't already, and perhaps over this time into the fetal position on your left side. For a few moments you might feel that release, you might notice it into your body, the release. Maybe you want to have a couple of nice deeper breaths, inhalation and exhalation. And then when you're ready to, from here, you could roll onto your back, perhaps using your hands to position yourself into the middle of your mat. You could have your knees bent, again, your feet hip width apart. Maybe, again, you could have your hands off to the side of your mat. And in your own time, if you wanted to, you could let your knees go from left to right again, from one side to the other. Maybe you want to pause and hold. Maybe you want to stay moving. Maybe you want to cross one leg over the other, maybe not. You might want to stay with your knees apart. When you're even and you've done both sides the same, your knees are back into an upright position. Again, you could have a go lifting both feet off the ground, maybe having hands on your knees. Maybe you want to have your knees together or slightly apart. You could have a go rolling from side to side, a little feeling into your spine. If you wanted to, you could roll all the way over to one side until your knee and thigh touch the ground and hold it there, and perhaps stretch out your opposite arm and work that arm and shoulder down, maybe looking to that extended hand or shoulder. You might want to stay with the smaller movements. If you are doing the twisting stretch, you might want to go over to the other side and do both sides the same. When you're even, you've done both sides. If you're back in an upright position, perhaps grabbing your knees again, rolling a little from side to side. You could try rolling a little forward and back if you want to, with your spine and knees in the other direction. You could have a go if you want to, what they call a happy baby, where you reach for your feet or ankles and bring your feet above your armpits, your knees perhaps above your armpits. You could move your feet a little from side to side, or roll a little from side to side, or forward and back, or in some circles. You could experiment with if you wanted in your expression of a happy baby. From there, if you wanted to, you could let go of your feet and bring your feet together, sliding your hands away and bringing your knees apart into your expression, the start of a butterfly, and maybe stacking your hands again and bringing the backs of your hands above the top of your head, letting your elbows fall apart. Again, you might want to have some conscious breaths or notice your breathing. You might want to have some little movements with your elbows or knees or hands or legs. Feel free to move or adjust. Again, the butterfly can be a nice symbol of transformation. And a nice thing to transform can be fear into trust. Maybe in this one it can be nice to encourage yourself. Maybe you can say to yourself that you are safe, everything is safe, you are okay. You've got this, everything's going to be okay. It'd be nice to encourage ourselves, I've got this, everything's going to be okay. From here again, you could straighten your arms and legs and maybe have a bit of a stretch out, maybe pointing your toes away or lengthening your fingers away. Again, you could bring your arms up and over, palms face down, maybe pushing your heels away and have a little press into your mat. Again, you might feel that tension build for a few moments, and then you could slowly release it. Then perhaps bending your knees and bringing your feet up towards your butt again and into the start of a bridge, and then perhaps moving into a bridge by lifting, raising up. Again, you might want to stay and hold in a bit of a static bridge. Feel free if you want to raise and lower in a moving bridge. And then when you're ready to finish from your bridge, wherever you are, you could lower down if you're not already. You could perhaps move in now into a restful position. Maybe you want to keep your knees bent, maybe you want to straighten your legs out, maybe you want to take them towards corners of your mat, or take your hands off your mat, maybe with your palms up or down, your feet apart. Whatever feels restful for you. It could be nice to have a conscious breath. Maybe you want to do a sigh or an inhalation through your mouth, an exhalation through your mouth. It can be nice sometimes. Just want to encourage you to give yourself permission to rest for a few moments. You don't need to do anything but rest. Feel free to move or adjust in any way that feels restful. perhaps you could give your fingers and toes a little wiggle, or your hands a squeeze. In your own time, you might want to roll over and into the fetal position. I always like to remind myself at the end of my practice when I'm in this position that we've all come from the same place. We were once little babies. We all came into the world totally innocent, totally pure, totally helpless. There's nothing more helpless than a human creature, human baby. But we come into the world with a confidence and clarity and asking for help. Babies don't hold back. And we come into the world with an openness and curiosity to learn. To learn from those who have gone before us, to learn from each other, but to learn mostly through trial and error, experimentation, picking ourselves up over and over. And we come into the world with a resiliency to do that over and over again. Thousands and thousands of times we pick ourselves up on our journey. I like to remind myself I'm still that same being, still a learning creature. I'm a social creature and need each other for help. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to keep picking ourselves up over and over on that journey with that resilience that we were born with. To come to that place again that we were born with, openness and curiosity to learn. So perhaps you could pick yourself up one last time to come up into a seated position. If you're choosing, maybe cross-legged. Maybe you want to have another little couple of twists from side to side, or some movements like the cat and cow with your spine forward and back, shoulders up and down. And then when you're ready, perhaps it could be nice to turn your palms up again, perhaps bringing the backs of your hands or wrists to your knees or thighs. If it's comfortable, you could close your eyes and soften your gaze. Or maybe you want to try mudra, where you bring a thumb and finger together. I always used to like my pointing and thumb together in they call the Dharma mudra. The Dharma means truth. Sometimes I would say to myself, I am just who I am, and I will be just who I will be. This all is just what it is. It's the truth. It's unfolding just as it will. I have a little tradition of singing a chant at the end of my practice. If you want to stay and listen, it could be nice to hear the sounds of the chant. Bargo devasya demahi diyo yo na prachodaya om muvasva tatsavetu varenyam Bargo devasya demahi diyo yo na prachodaya om muvasva tatsavetu varenyam Bargo devasya demahi diyo yo na prachodaya Feel free if you want to join me for an Om, or if you want to take a nice inhale. Just want to finish by saying thank you and namaste. Thank you for sharing in the practice with me. feel free to leave a comment or give some feedback. Anything, I always welcome any feedback, anything to improve or anything that you've enjoyed or you'd like me to change or do better. Feel free, if you want to click on a link below and make a contribution to help me do more videos. I'd appreciate that. And yeah, thanks again. Thank you.